Have you ever noticed how a woman's subtle gestures, like playing with her hair or stealing glances, seem to say more than words ever could? In this video, we're diving deep into the powerful unspoken signs of female attraction. From playful touches to the intensity of her gaze, these behaviors reveal her true feelings, often before she even realizes it herself. Attraction isn't always about what's spoken. In fact, some of the strongest signals are silent, hidden within body, language, eye contact, and nervous little gestures that most men overlook. But once you learn to recognize these cues, you'll never misinterpret a woman's interest again. Stay with us until the end to unlock the hidden meanings behind these delicate actions, and you'll learn how to truly understand the language of attraction in a way you never thought possible. And the last sign we'll discuss, it's the rarest but also the most undeniable. Once you spot it, you'll know for sure. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I encourage you to click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on today's topic. If you enjoy the content, please comment 1 below. If it doesn't resonate with you, leave a 0. Your feedback is crucial, as it helps me create better videos that align with your interests. Now, let's get started. The alluring dance of her hair. When a woman is deeply attracted to you, one of the most revealing yet delicate signs is how she plays with her hair. It may seem like an innocent habit, but in reality, it's deeply rooted in psychology and attraction. This simple movement, often unconscious, signals excitement, nervousness, and a deep desire to capture your attention. Hair is one of the most defining features of femininity. Throughout history, long, healthy hair has been associated with beauty and fertility, making it an instinctive way for women to express attraction. When a woman is interested in a man, she will often touch, flip, or twirl her hair in ways that make her more noticeable. Pay close attention to the details, twirling a strand around her finger. This is a classic sign of nervous energy and excitement. If she does this while maintaining eye contact, she's subtly flirting, flipping her hair over her shoulder. This exposes her neck and face, drawing your focus toward her more feminine features. Running her fingers through her hair, she's instinctively adjusting her appearance, ensuring she looks good in your presence. Brushing her hair away from her face, a subtle way to keep your attention on her facial expressions, showing she's engaged in the moment. Imagine this. You're at a cafe, having a conversation with a woman, and you notice her absent-mindedly twirling her hair, gently twisting the ends or running her fingers through it. It's not just a habit. Her body is responding to the attraction she feels. It's an unspoken invitation, a subconscious effort to draw you in without saying a word. But here's the key. Don't take just one action as a definite sign. Look for patterns. If she repeatedly plays with her hair while making eye contact and smiling, it's a strong indication that she's attracted to you. Combine this with the other signals we'll discuss, and you'll be able to confidently read the moment. The magnetic power of stolen glances. One of the most unmistakable signs that a woman is deeply attracted to you lies in the quiet moments, when she steals glances in your direction. These quick, almost nervous looks are filled with unspoken emotions, charged with an energy that words could never convey. As her eyes flicker toward you, only to dart away the second you catch her, it's not just a sign of shyness, it's a powerful, almost primal signal of desire. The tension in those fleeting moments holds the weight of unexpressed curiosity, anticipation, and a yearning she might not even fully comprehend. When a woman is drawn to you, she might not yet feel comfortable locking eyes for long stretches, afraid that it would make her feelings too obvious. Instead, she engages in this silent language of attraction, sneaking peeks at you when she thinks you're unaware. These stolen glances are like windows into her deeper, hidden feelings, an invitation to understand the pull she feels toward you, even if she's not ready to say it out loud. If she consistently glances at you when she thinks you won't notice, only to quickly look away as if she's been caught, it's not just a coincidence. It's a strong, unspoken declaration of her attraction. It's her way of taking in your presence, studying you without making her interest too obvious. But not all eye contact is the same, and different types of glances carry different meanings. Understanding these nuances is key to interpreting her interest correctly. The lingering gaze. If she holds eye contact with you just a second longer than normal before looking away, she's inviting you to engage. This isn't accidental. It's a deliberate attempt to create a moment of connection without words. She wants you to notice her, and she's allowing you a brief window into her thoughts. The quick glance and look away. This is more subtle. She's interested, but unsure how you feel about her. This fleeting, almost hesitant glance is a test, a way to gauge your reaction without putting herself in a vulnerable position. If she does this multiple times, she's hoping you'll pick up on the hint. The double take. If she looks at you, looks away, then looks back again, this is a clear sign that she's intrigued. The double take isn't something people do by accident. It's an involuntary response when someone piques their interest. She's checking to see if you're still there, still looking, still within her orbit. The side glance with a smile. If she looks at you out of the corner of her eye while smiling, this is a flirtatious and playful sign. She's inviting you into her world without making a full-on move. It's her way of saying, I see you and I like what I see. It's also important to note that context matters. A single glance might not mean much, but a repeated pattern of eye contact is a strong indicator of attraction. If she's making eye contact, breaking it, and then seeking you out again, she's engaging in a dance of subtle communication. Her eyes are revealing what her words might not. So how should you respond? The key is to match her energy without overdoing it. If she's giving you a lingering gaze, hold it for a second before smiling or nodding slightly. This acknowledges the connection while keeping it playful and confident. If she's offering quick glances, a simple, relaxed return glance can let her know you're interested too. However, if she never makes eye contact again, don't force it. Some women might be shy, while others may not feel the same attraction. The best approach is to read the moment naturally and respond in a way that feels effortless. Women are highly aware of their surroundings, and when they're attracted to someone, their eyes will naturally gravitate toward that person. It's a biological response, one that's been ingrained over centuries of human interaction. So if you find a woman constantly stealing glances at you, take note. Her body is speaking in a way her words haven't yet caught up with. And if she pairs those glances with other signs, like adjusting her hair, tilting her head slightly when she looks at you, or smiling as she turns away, then it's time to pay attention. She's telling you in her own silent way that she's drawn to you. Eye contact is one of the most powerful nonverbal signals of attraction. It builds intimacy, creates connection, and fosters a sense of excitement between two people. If you learn to recognize these subtle cues, you'll be able to sense a woman's interest long before she ever says a word. So the next time you catch a woman stealing glances at you, don't ignore it. Read the moment, respond with confidence, and let the silent conversation unfold. Laughter, smiles, and playful teasing, one of the most undeniable signs that a woman is deeply attracted to you, is when she frequently smiles and laughs in your presence, even when the jokes aren't all that funny. This isn't just a casual reaction, it's a deeply revealing expression of how she feels around you. Laughter is a universal signal of comfort, joy, and connection. And when a woman is drawn to you, her natural response is to express that attraction through her smiles, giggles, and bursts of laughter. The more she enjoys your company, the more freely she laughs. It's a subconscious way of signaling that she feels good in your presence. Think about it. When someone makes you feel good, safe, and intrigued, your body reacts almost instinctively. Laughter becomes more frequent, smiles more genuine, and the entire atmosphere shifts. If she's laughing at your jokes, even the ones you know don't deserve such a strong reaction. She's doing more than just being polite. She's revealing a deeper emotional attraction, a chemistry that can't be faked or forced. But laughter alone isn't the only clue. Pay attention to how she laughs. Does she lean in slightly when she giggles? Does she touch your arm in the middle of a laugh? Does she tilt her head back, exposing her neck in a way that makes her look open and relaxed? These are all unconscious cues that show she's letting her guard down and allowing herself to be vulnerable around you, a clear sign of attraction. Playful teasing is another major indicator. If a woman playfully mocks you, gives you a hard time in a light-hearted way, or exaggerates something you say in a fun manner, she's testing the waters of flirtation. Teasing is her way of engaging with you on a deeper level, creating inside jokes, and building a playful connection that sets you apart from others. Here are some key signs to look for. Exaggerated laughter. If she giggles at your simplest jokes, even the ones that aren't that funny, she's signaling attraction. Playful teasing. If she jokingly calls you out or exaggerates something you say, she's testing the waters to see how you respond. Smiling for no reason. If she's smiling while listening to you, even when you aren't saying anything particularly amusing, it's because she enjoys your presence, laughing before you even finish a joke. This shows anticipation and excitement. A strong sign that she's tuned into you, finding excuses to keep the conversation going. She might make jokes or light-hearted comments just to prolong the interaction. Imagine this. You're telling a simple story, not even trying to be overly funny, but she's laughing, smiling, and leaning into you. Maybe she even lightly nudges you or playfully rolls her eyes while grinning. That's a clear sign she's enjoying the dynamic between you, and she wants to keep the energy going. Her laughter is her way of saying, "I enjoy being around you." And if she's playing with her hair while she laughs, that's a double dose of attraction right there. A woman who combines laughter with other body language cues, like subtle touches, tilting her head, or prolonged eye contact, is showing clear interest. But here's the key. It's all about consistency. If she only laughs at one joke and then goes back to being neutral, it might not mean much. But if she's laughing throughout the conversation, smiling often, and engaging playfully, then you've got her attention. A woman's body language will always reveal more than her words. When you notice her laughing effortlessly, teasing you playfully, and smiling in your presence, take it as a sign that she's not just enjoying the conversation, she's enjoying you. The unconscious signals, she can't hide some attraction signals, are so subtle that even she may not realize she's giving them. These unconscious cues happen when a woman is truly interested in you, but isn't ready to verbalize it. Unlike obvious flirting, these signals emerge naturally without conscious effort, making them some of the most reliable indicators of attraction. Mirroring your movements. One of the most powerful signs of connection is when a woman subconsciously mirrors your body language. If she starts adopting your posture, gestures, or even your speech patterns, she's not just being polite, she's syncing with you on a deeper level. This is called behavioral mirroring, and it happens when we feel comfortable with someone and want to establish rapport. If you lean in slightly, does she lean in too? If you take a sip of your drink, does she do the same moments later? These small but meaningful actions show that she's tuned into your presence and feels a connection with you. Fidgeting and nervous energy. When a woman is attracted to someone, nervous excitement often manifests through small, unconscious movements. She may touch her necklace, adjust her bracelet, or smooth her dress while talking to you. These aren't just random actions. They are her body's way of channeling nervous energy, signaling that she's engaged and eager to make a good impression. You might also notice her playing with the edge of her sleeve, touching her lips or lightly tapping her fingers. These subtle behaviors indicate that she's fully present in the moment and invested in the interaction. Leaning in and close proximity. Physical distance is one of the clearest indicators of attraction. Even in a crowded room, if she's interested in you, her body will instinctively angle toward you. Her feet, shoulders, and entire posture will naturally lean in your direction. This movement isn't conscious, it's her body's way of seeking closeness. If she consistently chooses to stand or sit near you, especially when she has other options, take it as a strong sign that she enjoys your presence and wants to maintain a sense of intimacy. Another sign to watch for is how she reacts in group settings. Does she position herself closer to you when others are around? Does she subtly shift in your direction during conversation? If she's prioritizing proximity to you over others, it's an undeniable sign that she's drawn to you. Final and most powerful sign, touch. A woman will rarely touch a man she's not interested in. Physical touch is one of the strongest indicators of attraction because it bypasses words and goes straight to emotion. Even the lightest graze carries meaning when there's chemistry between two people. Types of touch to watch for: accidental, oops, touches. If she brushes your hand as she reaches for something, bumps into you lightly, or lets her knee touch yours under the table. These accidents are often intentional. It's her way of testing the waters, seeing how you react to physical closeness. Lingering touches. A touch that lasts even half a second longer than necessary is a clear sign of attraction. Whether it's her hand resting on your arm a bit too long or a casual touch on your back as she walks past you, lingering contact is a major indicator of interest. Playful arm punches or shoulder taps. If she playfully hits your arm when laughing or gives you a light shove in a teasing manner, she's using touch to build a connection in a fun, flirty way. This kind of touch creates familiarity and deepens attraction. Women use touch in a variety of ways to signal interest, and once you become more aware of these cues, you'll be able to recognize attraction instantly. The key is to notice patterns. If she repeatedly finds ways to make physical contact, whether through playful taps, accidental brushes, or prolonged touches, she's showing clear signs that she's drawn to you. Attraction is often unspoken, revealed through subtle movements, body language and touch. When you learn to read these signals, you'll be able to understand a woman's interest without her having to say a single word. The next time you're with a woman, pay attention to these small but powerful gestures, because in those unspoken moments, the truth of attraction is revealed. Attraction isn't loud, it's in the details. A woman's hairplay, her eyes, her laughter, her touch, these are the real indicators of interest. The next time you're with a woman, don't just listen to what she says, watch what she does. Her body will always tell the truth. If you've ever noticed any of these signs before, drop a comment below. I want to hear your experiences, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a breakdown like this. 8 compliments that make a woman feel truly seen, and why most men miss them. She was 62. And still remembered the last time someone made her feel beautiful without mentioning her looks. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a bouquet or a compliment on her dress. It was a quiet moment at the corner table of a coffee shop when someone looked up, smiled, and said, "The way you think." It stays with me. She never forgot that sentence, because in a world that constantly sees women for what fades, he saw what lasts. If you've ever wondered why some women grow brighter with age while others dim under the weight of being unseen, this might be for you. And if something in this connect setting, your own story, I hope you'll leave a comment. Sometimes just knowing we're not alone in how we love can be the beginning of healing. Because today, we're not talking about pickup lines or flattery. We're talking about presence, words that carry weight, compliments that land deeper than appearance and why they stay. There's something different about a man who's lived a little longer, who no longer rushes to impress, but takes his time to observe, to notice the quiet. Power in a woman's presence, not just her perfume or her smile, but how her energy shapes the room. And when that man speaks, his words don't feel like tactics, they feel like recognition. A mirror held up not to flatter, but to see, the E. Where you light up when you talk about something you love, it's magnetic. You're not talking about her body. You're not even talking about her words. You're noticing something deeper, the spark that comes alive in her eyes. She feels known, not evaluated, not sized up, just witnessed. You make people feel safe without even trying. She doesn't need to raise her voice to be felt, because she grounds the space. There's something deeply calming about her, like the hush before a storm or the first light of morning. People seem to settle around her, speak more slowly, breathe more deeply. And it's not something she tries to do, it's just who she is. That kind of acknowledgement, it heals the part of her that always had to hold the room without ever being held. And when someone finally notices it, not as a skill, but as a presence, it feels like being seen for the first time in a language she didn't know anyone else spoke. I admire how you stand your ground, with kindness, to lead with grace even after years of being tested. That's real strength. And when you say this, you honor her journey, not just her demeanor. Joanne wasn't loud. She didn't argue, but when something mattered, she wouldn't budge. I once saw her speak up at a town hall, politely but firmly correcting a well-known speaker. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her calm was disarming. Later, when I asked how she stayed so composed, she said, "Kindness isn't weakness. It's knowing your worth and not needing to shout it." That stayed with me, because standing your ground isn't about defiance, it's about dignity. And she carried hers with quiet power. You make ordinary things feel special. She isn't flashy, she's present. Take Margaret, for example. Every Sunday morning, she'd open the same little window in her kitchen and let the sunlight spill in while she brewed her tea. Nothing fancy, just chamomile and honey. But the way she moved through it made it feel like a ritual, not a routine. Watching her fold the napkin, hum a quiet tune, wipe the counter with care, it made the whole morning feel intentional. And when you notice that, you're reminding her, she doesn't have to try to be worthy. She already is. You ask the kind of questions that stay with me. You're not praising her intellect. You're appreciating the way her curiosity stays, Edding, long after the conversation ends. Clara had a way of tilting her head just slightly when you spoke, as if she were listening not only to your words, but to everything behind them. Once over lunch she asked, "Do you think your silence is more about peace or fear?" And that question, so gentle, so unexpected, followed me for days, weeks. It wasn't about having answers. It was about the way she invited me to know myself better just by being willing to wonder aloud. That kind of question doesn't fade. It roots. You remember things most people forget. It's not memory, it's care. And in a world of forgetfulness, care is revolutionary. Sarah once brought me a book I had mentioned in passing months earlier, a childhood favorite I hadn't seen in decades. I didn't even realize I had spoken about it aloud. But she remembered. Not just the title, but the way I smiled when I described the illustrations inside. That moment wasn't about nostalgia. It was about feeling seen in the smallest, quietest corner of myself. Because remembering isn't about the big moments. It's about holding on to the ones most people miss. And when someone like Sarah does that, she's not just thoughtful, she's unforgettable. You bring calm with you. Michael used to dread social events, too much noise, too many masks. But the first time he sat across from Elise at a small dinner, he felt something shift. She didn't try to fill the space. She didn't interrupt. She simply listened with a stillness that didn't feel awkward, but sacred. Her silence wasn't absence. It was presence. He remembered feeling his shoulders drop, his breath slow. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he had to perform. Just being near her felt like rest. That kind of calm. It's a gift. And it's rare. She doesn't have to fill the silence. She is the silence that soothes. That kind of presence doesn't demand. It restores. You inspire me to be more of myself, not less. You're not just saying you're great. You're saying, I grow when I'm around you. And that's not flattery. That's a mirror. Derek realized this one quiet evening as he watched Evelyn speak to a small group of volunteers. She wasn't loud. She didn't command the room. She didn't try to be more than she was, and yet people listened, not because of volume, but because of presence. Evelyn had a way of holding space for others without losing herself. She didn't rush to fill silences. She didn't compete for attention. She simply was, steady, calm, clear. And in her clarity, others found their footing too. Later that night, as they walked to the car in the chill of early evening, Derek said something he hadn't rehearsed. Something that rose from somewhere honest. "You make me want to stop apologizing for who I am." He didn't mean to say it, it wasn't planned. It just came out, as truths often do when we're safe enough to speak them. He realized in that moment, some people don't change you by correcting you. They don't force you to be better. They remind you by their very being of the wholeness already inside you. They're not louder, they're not flashier, they're just anchored in themselves. And standing near someone like that, you begin to remember the parts of yourself you forgot you trusted. And that perhaps is the most sacred kind of love. Not the kind that rewrites you, but the kind that lets you reclaim yourself. Most men spend years perfecting lines, but a man with depth knows the most powerful compliment is honest attention. See her clearly, speak that clarity, and you won't just captivate her, you'll help her feel seen in a world that forgot how. If one of these lines reminded you of someone, say it to her. today. And if you've ever received a compliment that stayed with you, I'd love to hear it. Just comment, "I still remember what they said." Maybe your memory will be the reminder someone else needs. If this video connects something true in you, share it with someone who might need it. And if you want more reminders of what real connection sounds like, subscribe. We tell stories that don't just fill silence, they honor it. She loved him for years, until she couldn't. Most wives don't say why she used to smile when he walked into the room, not because he brought flowers or said anything special, but because his presence alone once meant something warm, something safe. Now at 67, she barely looks up when he enters, not out of anger, not out of spite, but somewhere along the years she quietly stopped expecting anything. If you've ever felt yourself fading in a relationship you once held sacred, this story might echo something unspoken in you, and if it does, I hope you'll share a comment. Sometimes the quiet truth we carry is exactly what someone else needs to hear. Because today we're not talking about failed marriages. We're talking about what makes love quietly dissolve when no one is watching. They met in their 20s. Back then, he made her laugh without trying. She would light up, describing how he remembered the little things. Her favorite kind of tea, the way she liked the curtains open in the morning. Back then, they were teammates, partners. They built a life, careers, children, holidays, memories tucked between grocery runs and family photos. But time is a curious sculptor. It doesn't chisel all at once. Sometimes it erodes with silence. For the longest time, she didn't even realize she was pulling away. It wasn't a decision. It was a quiet accumulation, a birthday forgotten. A shrug when she shared her thoughts, the way he'd glance at his phone more than her eyes at dinner, and then something shifted. Her name was Margaret. She was 66 that morning in the kitchen, standing barefoot on the cold tile floor, holding the same chipped mug she'd used since their 25th anniversary trip to Maine. It had a faded lighthouse on it. Once, it made her smile. Now it just felt heavy. She stared into the mug as if waiting for an answer to rise with the steam. But there was no answer. Only silence, and a strange emptiness she couldn't name. She realized she couldn't remember the last time Edward had really looked at her. Not glanced, not nodded. Looked. He used to study her face even when she was brushing her teeth. He used to laugh at the way she sang the wrong lyrics in the car. But now, even when she spoke, his replies came a second too late. Like echoes. From another room, she wasn't angry. She wasn't bitter. She was simply tired. Not the kind of tired a nap fixes, but the tiredness that settles in your bones when you spend too long feeling invisible. That day, she sat on the back porch with her coffee, and when Edward walked past without noticing, she didn't call out to him. She just sat, and for the first time in years, she wondered what life might feel like, if she chose herself again. Margaret remembered the first 10 years, the unspoken responsibilities, the invisible labor. She handled birthdays, holidays, school projects, and family drama. She planned doctor's visits, stayed up with sick kids, wrote thank you notes, and kept the photo albums organized. Edward worked hard, long hours, big deadlines. He brought home a paycheck and assumed that was enough, but he never noticed how much of her was poured into the quiet machinery of their life. When their daughter Emily broke her arm in 3rd grade, it was Margaret who rearranged her job, learned to wrap splints, and made every follow-up appointment. When Edward's mother fell ill, Margaret kept the medication chart, the meal schedule, the list of numbers taped to the fridge. He thanked her once. She smiled and kept going. At 34, she thought, that's what wives do. At 45, she told herself, I'm just better at this stuff. At 55, she stopped thinking about it altogether. She just did it, because someone had to. She remembered one night, after a long week, asking Edward if he could just make dinner for the kids. He looked surprised and said, just tell me what to make. Even in asking for help, she had to think for both of them. That was the part no one talked about. The mental weight, the remembering, the anticipating, the managing. It wasn't just what she did. It was what she held, alone. And one afternoon at the grocery store, standing frozen in front of the yogurt aisle, she realized something small but jarring. She didn't know what kind he liked anymore. Not because she forgot, but because she'd stopped caring. In that fluorescent-lit moment between shelves of dairy and quiet resignation, she asked herself, am I living beside Edward, or buried under the life he never noticed I built? She didn't want roses. She wanted partnership, not perfection, just presence. But dinner turned to silence. The spark became habit. And in the quiet spaces, resentment began to whisper. He didn't notice when she stopped asking him to join her for walks. Didn't ask why she sat outside longer at night. Didn't see that she'd stopped waiting for him to come to bed. She wasn't punishing him. She was simply drifting, like a boat whose anchor had loosened over time. What hurt most wasn't the arguments. They barely had those anymore. It was the absence of noticing. Margaret would place his reading glasses on the nightstand when she found them in the laundry room. He'd wear them, never asking how they got there. She'd refill the coffee tin, restock the fridge with his favorite snacks, pick up his prescriptions without a word. Edward didn't mean to overlook her, but the daily kindnesses that once felt shared now felt like tasks Margaret did alone. Sometimes she'd hear him laugh at a documentary in the living room and pause, wondering if he would call her in to watch too. He didn't. Other times she'd lie awake at 2 a.m., hearing him breathe beside her, wondering when their conversations had turned into logistics, bills, groceries, calendar reminders. There were no slammed doors, no betrayals, just weathering. Like wind on stone. And the deeper truth? Margaret began to miss herself more than she missed him. She wanted someone to ask about the book she was reading, to notice when she cut her hair, to reach for her hand, not out of routine, but out of recognition. But more than that, she longed to feel awake again in her own life, to be someone's favorite thought, not just their longest habit. When she tried to talk, he'd listen but not hear. He'd say, "You're overthinking," or "It's not that serious." And every time he dismissed her pain as an overreaction, she folded in a little more. Until one day she said nothing at all. She made dinner. She laughed at the right moments. She scheduled appointments, but she had quietly stopped offering her heart. Because offering it too long with no one receiving, it hurts deeper than silence. She thought maybe retirement would help. More time together, more chances to reconnect. But retirement didn't bring closeness. It brought exposure. Suddenly, he was home, all the time, and instead of sharing the quiet, he waited for her to fill it. He didn't mean to be a burden. But after decades of caretaking, she was done being someone's schedule. What she longed for was space, not from him, but for herself. She took up painting, started going to the library again, sat at cafes with a journal just to feel her own thoughts return. And slowly, she began to remember herself. She remembered the version of her who once danced in the living room at midnight, who had opinions, stories, and laughter that didn't need permission. She remembered the girl he once fell in love with, and realized she missed her too. One evening she found an old letter, something he had written on their 5th anniversary. It was messy, poetic, heartfelt. It spoke of her eyes, her mind, her bravery. She read it 3 times, and for a moment she cried, not because of what was written, but because of how long it had been since he had seen her that way. She left the letter on the kitchen counter. He didn't mention it, didn't ask. She realized then, it wasn't malice, it was absence. And absence, when repeated enough, becomes neglect. She didn't leave, but something inside her did. She began to talk less, stopped explaining herself, stopped hoping he'd notice. And in the stillness, she chose herself. Not in defiance, but in survival. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible beside someone you once loved deeply, know this: you are not unlovable. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are simply tired of being unseen. And that fatigue has a right to speak. Maybe the hardest part isn't losing the relationship. It's realizing you've lost yourself, trying to hold it together. But it's never too late. Not to be loved again, but to see yourself again, to listen to your own laughter, to touch your own joy, to become your own presence. If this touched something in you, leave a comment below. I'm learning to see myself again. It may help someone else feel less alone. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, please share it, because love in our later years doesn't need to fade, but it does need to be fed. What emotionally mature men do when they love you. Without needing words, he wasn't the kind of man who made grand declarations. No sweeping gestures, no flowery promises whispered under the stars. But the way he moved through her life, quietly, consistently, and with unwavering presence, spoke louder than anything words ever could. At 62, Margaret didn't believe in fairy tales anymore. She had lived enough of life to know that love wasn't always loud. Sometimes it arrived like he did, with groceries in one hand and a worn-out book he thought she might like in the other. If you've ever found yourself wondering what love should feel like at this age, when drama has lost its charm and you're done decoding silences, this story may feel familiar. And if it does, I hope you'll leave a comment. Because maybe, just maybe, someone out there is quietly hoping they're not the only one learning how to receive love without conditions. Because today, we're not talking about passion that burns fast. We're talking about something steadier. What emotionally mature men do when they love you. In her younger years, Margaret used to believe that intensity meant intimacy. If her heart didn't race, if the conversations weren't filled with edge, if the pain of longing wasn't present, it must not be love. But what she didn't realize then was that chaos had become familiar. And familiarity often gets mistaken for truth. It wasn't until she met James that she began to question it. James didn't play games. He didn't leave her wondering what his silence meant or why he hadn't texted back. He didn't disappear when things got real. In fact, that was when he leaned in closer. The first time she cried in front of him over something she thought was silly, he didn't try to fix her pain. He just sat there, listening, holding space. And when she finally exhaled, she realized she wasn't waiting for a solution. She just wanted to be met. That's the first thing emotionally mature men do. They meet you where you are without trying to rearrange your emotions into something more convenient. Margaret used to be the fixer. She had been with men like Darren, who would spiral into silence for days after a disagreement, leaving her to walk on emotional eggshells just to restore peace. She had held the weight of their anxieties, their outbursts, their unresolved pasts, carefully, cushioning her words, smoothing her tone, and pushing aside her own needs in the name of love. In every past relationship, Margaret had carried the emotional load, tending to his moods, managing his insecurities, softening her truth to avoid conflict. There was a time she believed this was intimacy, that knowing exactly how to soothe someone, to make them feel safe at her own expense, meant she was valuable. She knew how to spot a shift in tone from across the room, a sigh, a clenched jaw, the way the fork hit the plate just a little too hard. She didn't even realize how much energy she spent scanning for signs, anticipating weather patterns in someone else's storm. And for years, she confused that emotional hypervigilance with closeness, with being needed, with being loved. But James didn't require decoding. When he was upset, he said so, with clarity, not cruelty. When he was tired, he rested. When he loved her, he didn't make her prove she was worth it. He simply let his actions reflect it. There was no game to win. No wound to bandage before it bled onto her, and that at first felt unfamiliar, almost wrong. She kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the silence, the shift, the moment she would once again become someone else's emotional caretaker. But it never came. That's the second thing emotionally mature men do. They take responsibility for their emotional world and don't hand it to you to carry. There was a moment, one Margaret still remembers clearly. She had a long day. Her sister was ill, the car wouldn't start, and she spilled coffee all over her favorite sweater. When James came over, she didn't greet him with a smile. Instead, she exhaled and said quietly, "I just need to not be needed tonight." Without hesitation, James didn't ask questions or offer platitudes. He kissed her forehead gently, reheated some leftover soup from the fridge, and sat on the porch while she took a long bath in silence. There was no sulking, no silent punishment. just space, offered freely. Later that night, Margaret found him, still on the porch, reading one of his old philosophy books by candlelight. He looked up, smiled softly and said, "I figured you'd come out when you were ready." That sentence stayed with her longer than he could have known, because in the past, men like Thomas would have made her feel guilty for pulling away. She would have had to explain herself, to reassure them, to clean up the emotional mess that wasn't hers to begin with. But James, he didn't make her responsible for his comfort. The next morning, he didn't bring it up. He didn't ask if she was better or if they were okay. Instead, he made tea, handed her a cup, and asked if she wanted to walk the dog with him. No pressure, just presence. It was such a subtle thing, his ability to honor her need for solitude without retreating himself, that she almost missed it. But that's what emotional maturity looks like. It's not loud. It doesn't need recognition. It just shows up in the quiet, respectful way that makes space for both people to breathe. That's the third thing. They honor your boundaries, even when those boundaries mean stepping back. For a while, love from an emotionally mature man doesn't make you smaller. It doesn't demand that you dim your light to soothe his shadows. It invites you to expand. Before James, Margaret had dated a man named Elliot, who always felt threatened by her curiosity. When she mentioned wanting to take a night class in literature, Elliot scoffed, "Aren't you too old for that?" She laughed it off then, but the sting lingered. Over time, she found herself slowly silencing parts of herself, her interests, her bold ideas, her bright clothes, anything that made her stand out too much. Because being loved, it seemed, required her to be smaller. But with James, things felt different. He didn't just tolerate her independence, he cherished it. When she talked about enrolling in that same literature class years later, James asked what nights it met, and rearranged his own schedule so he could be the one making dinner. When she showed him a poem she had written, nervous about sharing, he read it slowly, then simply said, "That line right there, that's you, I'm glad you wrote it." Margaret never had to defend her voice, her ambition, or her quiet nights with books and chamomile tea. He never needed to dim her brilliance. To feel seen himself, he stood beside her, not in competition, but in admiration. And in doing so, Margaret slowly remembered how much of herself she had tucked away over the years. With James, there was no pressure to trade pieces of herself for closeness. She didn't have to shrink to fit inside someone else's insecurities. That's the fourth truth. They see you as whole, not a role. James and Margaret had their share of disagreements. Once, on a rainy Thursday, James forgot to call when he was going to be late for their anniversary dinner. Margaret had waited at the restaurant alone, her dress damp with drizzle, the table candles flickering with shadows of disappointment. When he finally arrived, breathless and apologetic, she felt the old sting rise in her chest, of being left, of being unimportant. But before she could spiral into silence, he looked her in the eyes and said, "I messed up. Not just because I was late, but because I didn't respect your time, and I know how much you value presence." There was no defensiveness, no attempt to blame traffic or work or forgetfulness, just accountability. In past relationships, Margaret had been met with sulking, gaslighting or dismissals. Arguments turned into cold wars. Resolution meant her backing down, but with James, conflict didn't feel like a threat. It felt like an opportunity to understand, to repair, to grow. Another time, they argued over something seemingly small, whether to spend the holidays with his family or hers. The conversation got tense. Margaret raised her voice. James went quiet, not to punish, but to listen. When he spoke again, he said, "I can feel this matters more to you than I realized. Let's slow down. I'm not going anywhere." That pause, that emotional availability, diffused the tension. It reminded her that love doesn't mean always agreeing. It means not abandoning each other when disagreement arrives. That's the fifth sign. They repair, not retreat. Margaret didn't trust it at first. She thought needing too much was a flaw. That being low maintenance was a virtue, so when James offered steadiness when he showed up whole, she didn't know how to receive it. But over time, she came to see that quiet wasn't absence. It was presence finally at peace. One night, while folding laundry together, James said, You don't have to earn anything here, just be. And in that moment, something inside her softened. That's the sixth gift. They give safety, not just affection. So what do emotionally mature men do when they love you? They don't need you to mother them. They don't need you to explain their coldness. They don't need you to chase crumbs. They come whole. They stay. They grow. And most importantly, they love in a way that allows you to stay whole too. If you've ever walked on eggshells and called it love, this is your reminder. You were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. Real love doesn't ask you to vanish. It says, I see you. I'm still here. Have you ever felt the difference between chaos and calm in love? Leave a comment. I know the difference now. Someone might read it and realize they're not alone. What I let go to truly live. After 70, I remember the day I collapsed in the middle of my living room, not because I was ill, but because I was exhausted. Exhausted from carrying too much, exhausted from never being allowed to feel weak. This morning, years after that fall, I sat under the porch with a warm cup of tea in my hands, watching the last leaf drift gently from the tree in my front yard. No more pretending, no more performing, just me, lighter, more honest. If you've reached your 70s or are getting close, what have you been able to let go of? An old responsibility? A long-standing expectation that left scars? Share your story. Because maybe, just maybe, your truth is exactly what someone else needs to hear to understand. Letting go isn't weakness. It's the beginning of living real. Used to live to prove myself, that I was capable, that I was strong, that I could be the reliable daughter, the devoted wife, the tireless mother, the steady co-worker. I wore my resilience like armor, and it got heavy, so heavy I forgot who I was beneath it. There was a moment, years ago now, that I still carry with me. My friend Marianne and I were standing outside our office building in the biting cold of early March. She had just been passed up for a promotion again, and I was telling her to hang in there, to keep pushing. And then she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Why do we have to prove anything to anyone anymore? We've already given them our youth. What more do they want?" I didn't have an answer then, but her words followed me like a whisper in my bones. That night I stood in front of the mirror and asked myself the same question. I saw a woman with tired eyes and a tight smile, a woman who showed up for everyone but had forgotten how to show up for herself. I thought about the times I skipped lunch to stay at my desk, the family events I missed, the way I held my tongue to keep the peace at meetings. I thought about the evenings I smiled at dinner with friends while silently grieving, inside because I didn't want to burden anyone. Marianne's voice came back to me again and again, and slowly I began to strip away the layers. I stopped forcing small talk when I didn't feel like it. I started saying no to favors I didn't have energy for. I let go of the need to always have the right words, the right outfit, the right image. For the first time in decades, I began to feel light. I also thought of Lisa, my classmate from Gentle Yoga, 68 years old, with silver hair like ashes and a voice that always felt like a breeze at sunrise. Lisa had spent most of her life taking care of others, raising 4 grandchildren while her daughter worked far from home. For years, she barely had time for herself. But 3 years ago, over a cup of peppermint tea, Lisa told me something that has stayed with me ever since. I love my family, but I don't want to spend what's left of my life only tending to others. She started painting, oil landscapes mostly. Every Tuesday afternoon, she'd walk to the community center with a canvas under her arm. Sometimes I'd see her under the oak tree in the park, sketching with her brush, sunlight pouring over her moss-green sweater. She didn't ask anyone's permission. She didn't wait for an open space in her schedule. She just lived. And she lived so honestly, it made everyone around her pause and wonder what they might reclaim if they dared to stop waiting too. Letting go of the need to prove myself wasn't a grand declaration. It was small rebellions, stitched quietly into everyday life. And those quiet choices, those invisible shifts, started to bring me back home to who I really was. The first thing I let go of was the need for approval. Not because I stopped caring, but because I got tired. Tired of fitting into boxes that were never mine to begin with. tired of apologizing for being too quiet, too soft, too slow. These days, I wear what makes me feel at home in my skin. I don't cover the lines on my face. I earned everyone. I let go of the need to always be right. I once argued to prove a point, to win. But peace matters more now. Silence has taught me more than any debate ever could. I remember sitting next to my daughter. During one of her hardest days, I said nothing, just placed my hand on her shoulder. She cried. And in that moment I realized presence speaks louder than words. Regret. I carried it for decades. There were nights I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying words I never said. I remember one evening in particular. It was quiet, almost too quiet. I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching an old photo of my mother, my fingers tracing the outline of her smile. The house felt hollow, like even the walls were holding their breath. I whispered an apology into the dark, one I should have said when she was still here. But the silence only echoed it back. Some regrets arrive like a sudden wave, others linger like fog. I used to try to outpace them, bury them under chores, conversations, distractions. But they always returned. So instead, I started to sit with them. I'd make a cup of tea, light a candle, and give them space. Not to dwell, but to honor the fact that they meant something, that I had loved deeply and imperfectly. Eventually, I stopped letting regret define my nights. I no longer let it take from the mornings. It still visits sometimes. But now, I greet it like an old friend who's finally run out of things to say, words I didn't say, moments I didn't take, the final call I didn't make before my mother passed. But regret is a thief. It robs the present to feed the past. So I stopped feeding it. I plant instead small joys, simple routines, moments that matter now. I let go of appearances. I used to chase symbols of success, the newest phone, the flashiest car, the perfect home. Now I find elegance in comfort, in walking instead of driving, in sunlight through the trees, in a familiar cardigan that still smells like last winter's cinnamon tea. I also stopped trying to please everyone. I used to say yes because I didn't want to disappoint. But I've learned that kindness isn't martyrdom. Boundaries are a form of love too, especially love for myself. These days I say no with grace and yes only when my soul agrees. Loneliness used to haunt me. I feared quiet dinners alone, holidays without guests, empty afternoons. The sound of the heater clicking on in an empty room used to feel like a reminder that no one was coming. I remember one Thanksgiving, it was just me and a microwave dinner tray. I sat on the couch with a blanket pulled over my knees, watching the same movie I'd seen a dozen times before. I laughed at the familiar scenes, but there was no echo, just the sound of the fork tapping against the plate. I used to dread the silence that came after sunset. It felt heavy, almost accusing, like the stillness in the room was asking why I hadn't done more to be surrounded by people. But with time, that silence stopped sounding like judgment and began to sound like peace. I began noticing things I had missed before. The softness of the wind through the curtains, the golden color of the lamp in the corner, the way my slippers made a faint brushing sound on the floor. Now, solitude has changed shape. It's no longer a void, it's a retreat. I cook small meals just for myself and plate them with care. I light a candle not out of habit, but out of reverence for my own presence. I listen to music I love without worrying if anyone else will enjoy it. I sit on the porch with a book and let the sun find my face. And in those moments I don't feel alone, I feel full. I've grown fond of my own company, not as a consolation, but as a quiet kind of freedom, forgiveness. That came later. Old grudges dug deep, a friend's betrayal, a sister's silence. For years I carried that weight like it was part of me. But then one day I found an old photo, us smiling, arms linked, younger and softer. I sent her a message. Just 5 words, thinking of you, hope you're well. Her reply made my heart exhale. Now, at 70, I live by subtraction, not addition. I've started with the tangible things. I went through my closet and donated clothes I hadn't worn in years, keeping only the ones that felt like me. I cleaned out the hall drawer that once overflowed with expired coupons, broken pens, and batteries that no longer worked. Even my bookshelf looks different now. Fewer titles, but each one chosen with care. And it's not just physical. I've let go of some relationships too, the kind that once felt obligatory but now feel heavy. I stopped replying to group texts that drained me. I quietly stepped back from circles where I didn't feel seen, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Subtraction isn't loss, it's clarity. With each thing I remove, I make space. Space for quiet, space for warmth, space for myself. Addition. I remove the noise, the clutter, the pressure. I strip away the things I once thought I needed to be complete. And what's left? Stillness, space, room for the real me to stretch out and breathe. One of my grandchildren asked me recently, if you could go back to being 30, would you? I smiled. Maybe not. Because back then I ran fast but didn't know where I was going. Now I walk slow and I know exactly why. I don't need to be understood by everyone. I don't need to be admired, I just need to be real. And at this age, that feels like the greatest luxury. So what have you let go of lately? And what has it given back to you in return? If any part of this feels familiar, if it mirrors a quiet truth inside you, share your story below. Someone out there might need it more than you think, because sometimes the bravest thing we ever do is finally letting go. Few women over 70 know this, but it changed everything for me. She no longer chases packed schedules, no longer tries to please everyone. Each morning, she opens the curtains, stretches her arms to the sun, and whispers a quiet thank you. Then, she sits by her tea watching little birds peck at seeds in the garden. She used to fear that aging would steal her joy, but instead, it brought her closer to what truly matters. If you've ever asked yourself, can happiness still be found as I grow older? Perhaps this video is a gentle whisper meant for you, and if something in here speaks to you, leave a comment. Someone out there might be waiting to read your story. Because today we're going to explore 12 quiet habits that joyful women over 70 do every day, not to hold on to youth, but to keep their spirits shining. She didn't always live this way. In her 60s, she often woke up with a heaviness she couldn't name. Friends were busier or gone. Her body moved slower. Her calendar felt emptier. She wondered if life had quietly passed her by, but change didn't arrive in one big moment. It came in whispers, a shift here, a breath there. One morning she reached for her old teacup instead of the mug she never liked. Another day she walked to the mailbox just to feel the breeze. And then one afternoon, while dusting the living room, not because it needed it, but because she needed something to do, her hand paused on a photo frame. It was a picture of her younger self, hair windswept on a beach, eyes lit with laughter. She hadn't really looked at it in years. Her fingers gently brushed away the dust, then lingered on the corner of the frame. A wave of something warm and aching passed through her. Not sadness, not exactly, more like recognition, as if that younger woman in the photo had been waiting patiently to be remembered. She stood there for a while, silent, the hum of the refrigerator filling the room, the scent of lemon polish hanging faintly in the air. That moment didn't fix anything, but it cracked something open. After that, she started playing music again. Not loud, just background melodies while she tidied up or cooked. She found herself humming. She pulled out a worn scarf from the back of her drawer, the one she used to wear on her walks, and wrapped it around her shoulders, just because it felt like her. Slowly, quietly, life started to return, but not as it was, as something softer, more intentional, more hers. The first shift was how she greeted the day. Instead of grabbing her phone or jumping into chores, she made space for a morning ritual. Not a strict routine, just intention. She'd stretch toward the window, whisper thanks for another sunrise, and let the quiet settle in before the day began. Those 3 minutes anchored her. They reminded her she was still here, and this day still mattered. Then came fresh air. Every single day, no matter the weather, She opened a window or stepped outside. Sometimes it was just to smell the morning. Sometimes it was to sit on the porch, cup in hand, letting the sun touch her face. She didn't wait for perfect weather or grand plans. Fresh air became her medicine, her therapy, a reminder that she was still part of the world. She also stayed curious. Curious about recipes she hadn't tried. Curious about how her granddaughter edited videos. Curious about the tree in her neighbor's yard that bloomed too early. But it wasn't just about facts or skills. It was a way of staying awake to life. One afternoon she stood in the kitchen, staring at a jar of preserved lemons she'd forgotten she bought. Instead of putting them back, Evelyn, who hadn't tried anything new in months, looked up a Moroccan tagine recipe on her tablet. She didn't have all the spices, but she tried anyway. The stew simmered, unfamiliar and